Hello, everyone. My name is Rashid Manat. We have Jeremy Poole with us and William Aubrey. The three of us lead the Charlotte Tableau user group, and we want to welcome you to our first session of 2021. For those of you in Charlotte, we always appreciate you guys, all the support that you give us. For those of you who may not be in Charlotte or from Charlotte, definitely appreciate you guys joining us. We got a great session. The three of us are going to we try to do this at least once a year where we do a traditional beginner session. So this is going to be a great session if you are new to Tableau. Meaning that no matter what stage of new, you can never have opened it before. You could be within the first 6 to 8 months. Anybody who's in that new phase of Tableau, we like to do this at least once a year because Tableau changes. There's a lot that's different for a new user than perhaps when the three of us were new users. So we like to kind of always make sure that we kind of bring the newest users up to speed. If you're an experienced or an advanced user, this is probably going to be just a refresher. It's probably not going to be much new, but sometimes there are little things here and there. So, but just want to reiterate that this is our beginner session. So, like I said, from anybody that's new to Tableau, we hope this will be a good session for you. And let us know, like I said, if there's anything within Tableau as a new user that you're struggling with, and we'll try to make sure we kind of incorporate it as we go. Some housekeeping. What I want to do for virtually everyone is always kind of reaffirm that anything that has to do with us, if there was ever a link I would say that you should bookmark for us, it is kind of the one I'm showing at the moment. It is basically just usergroups.tableau.com/Charlotte. Hopefully this will work there, something like that. I'll leave that up for a second. That's the link that you kind of want to save because we're not going to make you remember this link over here and this link over there. We try to just consolidate all of our information into this one page so that everything that we produce or recommend or even talk about, we try to make sure we always have it consolidated here. So this would be the link, like I said, that you'd want to bookmark kind of going forward if you want to, kind of keep up with any of our content. And with that, I want to talk about some new things, some changes that we have made since the last time we spoke. Like I said, this is our community event page. It's going to have all the information about future events, past events. It has some information about us as the leaders. It has links to our YouTube channel. We try to keep content from past user group meetings on our YouTube channel. It has our Tableau user community page, which I'm going to talk about in detail in a second. We've got our favorite links. We've got our Tableau shorts and our best of VTUG, and I'll briefly describe what those are. We try to consolidate, like I said, content that we find useful, even if we're not the ones that created it. So our Tableau short section is literally just a collection of things that Tableau has posted to their YouTube page, basically over time. And this is the kind of stuff that I always feel like it comes in handy because it's the thing that you may not need it now, but when you do need it, you're not going to remember how to do it. And this is, as a new user, trust me, this is something that I used to struggle with all the time. Like, how do you hide totals? Or how do I remove nulls from filters? Or this is stuff that, like I said, Tableau has added, over the years, and they'll kind of every now and again, they'll put these little brief 2-minute tutorials out there. And this is good stuff because, like I said, it's always that kind of, it's useful because it's the day you need it. That's when you're kind of trying to remember how to do it. It's like you'll learn it once and you may not use it again for 6 months. And then one day down the road, you're kind of like, oh man, how did I do that again? So like I said, we try to keep this up to date with the kind of stuff that Tableau has out there, just little refreshers, 2-minute things here and there. And Best of VTUG is exactly what it sounds like. We try our best to produce good content in our virtual Tableau user group. But I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that some of these other user groups are producing great content. And sometimes we're students too, meaning that some of these user group meetings that we attend where other user groups are doing things that we found useful, we'll kind of direct you to those as well. These are just a collection of just a bunch of user group meetings that have taken place, over the past year and a half, where we found content in one of these user group meetings that we thought was really, really powerful and really good stuff. So as we find stuff that we think is, useful to the Tableau community, we just kind of put it out there and let you know that other user groups have put some great stuff together. So that's kind of in a nutshell, like I said, our, basic page. But I want to talk about is our community page, which we just added some enhancements to because Tableau allowed us to make some changes now that we couldn't do before. So again, don't worry about all these different links. That Best of VTUG, Tableau shorts, and community forum, all still available, like I said, on that one original link. But our community forum page, what we did is we were able to consolidate those best of links, meaning that instead of trying to have a document for like all of these links where we say, hey, this is great, you should go to this blog or you should go to this site. We just kind of created a collection of some of the stuff that we think is the most useful for Tableau users in general. We got a little section here on Tableau experts. As of this week, Tableau Tim became a Zen master. So every one of these people is a Zen master. It's a Tableau Zen master, and these are their blogs or their YouTube channels or just where they post really great content. I can't stress this enough. I don't care what level you are. These are the folks that you want to follow because they produce the top of the line. Like I said, even as user group leaders, we're always learning from some of these guys and girls. And it's just really great content. Some of these Tableau tips and tricks, design resources, these are all just links to content that we as Tableau user group leaders use ourselves. So I'm telling you that it's really great stuff. We'll try to keep it up to date as we go forward. And it is a community forum. Like I said, if you have any questions, any job postings, anything like that, feel free to use this page to kind of put that stuff out there. And again, I know I'm kind of going a little long here, but all of this content available at our homepage, which is just usergroups.tableau.com/Charlotte. So with that, I'm sorry, that was a mouthful. I want to talk today about our session. And today's session, like I said, is more for basically new users. So what we're going to do today is, just at the kind of the welcome and the introduction, Jeremy's going to give you a quick overview of what Tableau is, kind of, why you'd want to use it and kind of its strengths and weaknesses. William's going to give you a little bit of background on how to connect your data to Tableau. And then I'm going to cover the order of operations and the blue pill versus a green pill. And if you don't know what any of this means, I promise you by, in about 50 minutes, you will. And at the end, we're going to have breakout sessions with the three of us. So the three of us are going to go into different breakout rooms in Zoom. And then I think, depending on kind of how it cascades out, the three of us will just be available to kind of answer any questions or kind of, chat Tableau or just kind of, give you a little bit of feedback or just open an honest opinion about Tableau in general. So with that, I think I'm at the 12:10 mark. Jeremy, I'm going to pass it over to you. And Jeremy, like I said, is going to give us a quick Tableau overview. And Jeremy, I'll let you take it away. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rashid. So today I'm happy to be back with the group for the first time in 2021. Really psyched to see where this year takes this group. We love to kick off in this fashion, right? We love to kick off and kind of reset the year by starting with beginner focus session, right? We know that generally the beginning of a year is when we'll have some new folks join us. And it looks like that is held true today. I see so many names we haven't seen before on the invite list and on the attendee list. And Rashid expressed this, but welcome from me, welcome from William. We hope you'll take something away from the session. Again, this is going to be very high level today. My part of the presentation, I'm just going to do a little bit of an introduction to Tableau. It's my favorite part of my day job. I work as a consultant focused on data viz and self-service BI. So I get to do this with a lot of clients. I get to go in and help them paint the picture of how a self-service data viz tool like Tableau can fundamentally change the way they do business. So I enjoy this kind of stuff. I am a nerd, understandably so, but this is what I enjoy. This is what I love getting to do on a daily basis as well. So with that, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Tableau is and how I've used it, how some of the others in the group have used it, and why I think it'll be, in my opinion, the best power tool you can put in your analytics belt in your daily work. So for those who aren't familiar or here because somebody encouraged you to come and familiarize with the tool, Tableau is an extensible analytics platform that enables an organization to leverage the power of data to achieve their goals. That's a very high level vision statement, right? But what it really does, Tableau in the hands of everyone in an organization, from the CEO, the executive suite, all the way down to like the summer analyst that's there for 3 months, they're now able to deliver on the promise and the power that the organization's data contains. Data viz, obviously the central function of Tableau. It's best to think of data viz as a means of communication, right? I think we've all been in organizations that love to publish what we call the wall of data, these long Excel or CSV sheets that just flow on for pages and pages, but they're very heavy on record count and columns and fields, but they're very low on insight, right? You have a lot of steps to start to craft insight from these data sources. Spoiler alert, William's going to talk a little bit more about connecting to data in a bit, but what Tableau offers is the ability to start to summarize that data into meaningful insight for whatever your role may be, whatever level of the organization. You're free to start to create insight from data. So Tableau allows you to rapidly produce everything from a quick and dirty one-off analysis that never makes it past your desk but helps you answer a question, to powerful research and narratives that may go up to the executive suite or out to external partners that help explain a problem, explain a position, craft a narrative for why some action should be taken. Everything from the repeatable dashboards that we're probably most familiar with in our job, right? We all have probably been introduced to things that we look at daily, weekly, monthly on whatever repeatable cadence, which are more of our operational management tools. And then all the way up to Tableau is capable of creating some of the most beautiful infographic style visualizations that you've ever seen as well. So it's an inherently flexible tool. I'd say most people are joined to Tableau over competitors in this space because of the wide range of customization that it allows. We're not going to go super deep into all of those infinite number of customizations and techniques and practices today. Again, this is going to be a relatively high level beginner session, but I just want to frame the way that you think about the tool and about the space. So Tableau at its essence can be everything from an analyst's power tool to a data-driven drawing tool, which is a quote that I'm directly ripping off from Ken Flerledge. He used it a couple years ago at Tableau conference. And I truly believe it. And if you look at his profile, you'll see exactly what he means. So Tableau as a whole, it has a couple of primary components, right? Tableau Desktop is generally one of the more visible ones. Tableau Desktop is the application through which you are going to develop. You're going to connect to data. You're going to build analyses. You're going to build visualizations and customizations, and you're going to pull together dashboards. The second part of that, or the complementary part of that, is a product called Tableau Prep Builder. Tableau Prep Builder helps you tackle the use cases where your data is a little messy. It needs to be cleaned up, or maybe it needs to be augmented with other data sources, bringing together this collective of information for your organization or for your analysis. The third is where it starts to get really fun, right? You've got Tableau Server or Tableau Online, which is a managed solution where you can share and collaborate across your organization. So you prepare data with Prep, you build an analysis in Desktop, and you publish up to Tableau Server or Tableau Online to share across your organization. Another differentiating factor, and this is outside of the workspace and more of the just for fun space, there's also Tableau Public. It's a great place to practice. So as you're starting to learn and go along your Tableau journey, and you just want to work with data outside of your organization, you have a place to publish and a free tool to practice with. So I advocate for Tableau Public all of the time. You're about to see some really cool visualizations on Tableau Public that I mean to use to inspire you and show you the art of the possible, covering each of those 4 different categories of outputs that I mentioned earlier, from quick analysis to narrative building to dashboarding, and then even into bespoke infographics. Awesome. So let me share my screen. I've got some cool stuff to show you. Alrighty, so I'm going to highlight a couple of visualizations directly from Tableau Public. First couple are good examples of a one-off analysis, very limited in nature, but show the ability to convey a point, right? So this is a visualization on warming or global temperature over time, right? So you can start to highlight and see how global temperatures have increased over time, and then a breakdown of northern hemisphere versus southern hemisphere. So right, this is a relatively simple visualization. It's built with what Tableau would call either a highlight table or a heat map. Color is strategically used, and it presents a relatively straightforward picture of the information that's being communicated quickly. Very quick example of using data to tell a story. If you imagine the table that underlies this data, you can probably imagine a couple hundred rows that don't really tell a compelling narrative until you add this visualization component on top of it. Another example of just a quick and simple one-off analysis that's relatively powerful still. So this is a single chart, right? So this is just a chart highlighting countries and their ability and a person's ability to start and form a new startup in a given country. So average time to form a company by country: New Zealand, half a day; Georgia, not the state, the country, 1 day, all the way up to upwards of 230 days in Venezuela, right? And so it's looking, and this is just showing the number of number of countries where you're able to get your startup kicked off quickly over time, right? Very simple analysis, very limited in scope. These are things that you could start to do at your desk to understand a problem. So think of the things you do on a daily, or you're asked to answer on a daily basis. How could you potentially visualize that information to make the answer more clear? Now we're going to pretty much jump off the deep end when I jump to this next one, and you'll see what I mean. This is an exceptional example of narrative storytelling using Tableau in long form. So this is a visualization by Joshua Smith. He built this for a Tableau competition 2 years ago called Iron Viz. So this was his entry to the feeder round, where he wanted to focus on the different ways land is used across the U.S. So he focused on differences between pasture and cropland. So as you can see, this is a long form narrative storytelling visualization. All of this is Tableau. All of this is relatively basic functionality. He has not done anything fancy in this visualization to date. All he has done is just start to craft a compelling narrative. Now this is where it starts to get a little funky. He's using some visualizations he's using some imagery, but his Tableau visualizations overlaid are still very straightforward. So as you can see, he's telling a story as you work through the analysis and using data to help illustrate the points he's trying to make and the conclusions he's going to draw. So ultimately, as you get to the end, this ends up being a very robust story where he talks about the difference between pasture and crop and how land is used in the US. Right, so it's very deep, and it rounds off in a nice narrative. So this is an example of narrative storytelling in Tableau. All right, I gotta hide this banner. All right, so here's another example in a similar vein. This is another Iron Viz entry from a couple years back. This one is about the use of the letter E. And I honestly, when I first saw this one, I didn't think I was going to enjoy it because I didn't think I could be bothered to care, but it is absolutely a fascinating analysis on the letter E and how prevalent it is in language. So another long form narrative storytelling visualization. I'll let that guy load. All of these available on Tableau Public for further research. You can download them, you can reverse engineer them. A lot of fun stuff. Now in this one, Ludovic has very much introduced some more advanced concepts like chord diagrams here. As you can see, they're all interactive. You can start to see how letters tie to each other. Again, more highlights, all of this. Another great example of narrative storytelling. Into the vein of what you'll see more frequently at work, some examples of solid dashboarding best practice, right? Clear display of information, clear display or clear layout, lots of contextual information to help you interpret the chart. All of these things I've shown today are various use cases for Tableau, right? These are things that you'll do on your own. These are things you'll do in your organization. All of these are great examples as you start to think about how Tableau can be impactful in your organization or for your career. Another example of a very effective business dashboard is this one, built by Luke Stanke. This one has a lot of advanced concepts. It may look relatively simple, but this was a show-off view where he combined a lot of things he's learned over the years. So a lot of quick techniques from expanding and collapsing areas that add information. Sorry, I didn't reload these before we got started. So that's why it's having to kick them back off. Let me go ahead and get that one started. So just some quick examples of content on Tableau Public that's out there to help drive your viewpoint on what's possible in Tableau. I've got just 2 more to show, and then we'll kick it off and dive into how to connect to data. But just wanted to show another example, starting to look a little bit more like app functionality. You can start to see some of the techniques that various individuals use to navigate their dashboards, building in buttons and things like that. And then just a couple quick examples of the bespoke visualization category I mentioned as well, more of the infographic style. So this one is built by Kisley Benedict. It's Bangalore's retail hotspots, residential hotspots. Really, really beautiful, really, really compelling. Less of a focus on interactivity, though that is here, but this is more of something you'd imagine as a poster on a wall, right? And then big Buffy fan did this one. Any Buffy fans in the room? How many baddies did Buffy's buddies beat, and how many baddies bit back? It's an exploration of deaths in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV show. Again, I'd make it full screen if we had more time to show you what this looks like in full, but this contextual information shows you how to understand the chart, etc. So just wanted to give you a quick rundown of what's possible in the tool, what the tool is, and I'm going to hand it over to William to talk a little bit about the practical aspect of connecting to data in Tableau. Again, appreciate everyone joining. We'll talk more in a bit.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for that overview of Tableau. Of course, if anyone has any questions, we'll be doing these breakout sessions towards the end. So feel free to join anybody's session and ask whatever questions that you got. So connecting to Tableau for beginners, for anybody who's been using this tool for a while, it probably seems so intuitive that you just forget that that's an actual question, how to connect to Tableau. But whenever you launch Tableau for the very first time, you'll see a screen like this. It'll have different types of connections that you can make on the left-hand side. There'll be a big space where it'll show you all of your recent workbooks. So as you work on a workbook, the thumbnails will show up here. There are some samples at the bottom. And then on the right-hand side, there are some discover options. There are some training links, some resources. And this bottom right-hand corner, I believe it updates every now and then with different information. Visit of the day, looks like it's a quiz today. Different things will pop up there in the bottom right-hand corner. But let's talk again. So we're talking about how to connect to data. So you've opened Tableau for the first time, and you're presented with this screen. And that's the first thing that you need to know is that it's not working until you've actually have connected to data. And data in our interpretation is a file, or it's some kind of a web server or a database server. So that's what you see on the left-hand side. I'll take just a second to digress on this. Upper left-hand corner, this is, I think some people call this the sparkle, the Tableau sparkle. If you click that, it'll take you to your actual working canvas. So that always takes you to your data connection screen, toggling back and forth right there. So in your data connection screen, the first choice you want to make is, are you going to connect to a file, or are you going to connect to a server? So we're going to start this example by just showing how to connect to a file. And file options are, there's one other option here, connect to a Tableau server. We can cover that in a minute. But when you want to connect to a file, you're thinking about Excel, tab delimited files, other sorts of unstructured data like JSON, and then there are several other options. Let's click that More button here on the left-hand side so you can see what some of those are. So that'll just give you other files that you can connect to. For the most part, when we're working with data, we typically have some kind of a text file. So let's start out with a text file this morning. And I just happened to download all of our contacts in the Charlotte Tableau community today. And I wanted to highlight what are some of the things that you can do once you connect to a file. And first thing is you can hide a field. If you got something that's personally identifiable information, maybe you don't want that to come through on your data source. So you've got all the fields that are coming through, and you can see that Tableau protects all of our information by hashing it. Tableau leaders can't even get to personally identifiable information. So this is one of the activities that you can do when you're connecting to data. You can hide some of these fields. Let's just go ahead and we're going to try to do a couple more. So you can hide fields that come in your data source. Another thing you can do is you can, I noticed over here on the right-hand side, we had an unsubscribed button. So maybe if we're working with this data and we didn't want to bother anybody who's unsubscribed, we could add a global filter to the data source. So upper right-hand corner, you can see there's a global filter. And let's say I just didn't want to, I wanted to do some kind of analysis, but I didn't want to bother anybody who's unsubscribed. So I can just set that to 0, and these 6 people will disappear from the data source. There you go. Other things you can do, you can have a live connection to the file, or you can have an extract. I think most of us typically recommend an extract just because when you bring the data into the Tableau hyperfile format, it's typically more fast to work with. So we typically create an extract. On the canvas, there are other things that you can do. So the first, recently in the 2020 versions of Tableau, the data canvas has been split into two, I don't know how to describe this, 2 layers. The top layer, you'll see here, many people are using the term noodle. It's not quite a join, but it's a way to establish a relationship between 2 data sources. So if you add 2 data sources or 2 files or 2 spreadsheets to the same on the canvas, Tableau will encourage you to try to create a relationship between those 2. So if you have people here and people there, then you can create a relationship between those 2 people. And when you begin to use the data, if you use data from both of those spreadsheets, then it'll enforce a join of a type to enable that relationship and to get that data shown on your worksheet. So that's one level of this thing that you can do. A second level of this canvas is you can actually double click into the data source. So you notice I brought one onto the page, but now I'm going to double click on it. And here, if I wanted to establish fixed joins, like I wanted it to always be a left join, I want it to always be a right join, I can do that in a rigid way like we did traditionally with previous versions of Tableau. So that's always an option too. But just at a very high level, all we just did just a moment ago is we connected to a text file. We were brought to this metadata page, this canvas. We applied a global filter. We created an extract. We thought about other connections that we could make. We examined the data, and we also removed some of the fields. So at this point, we could go back to our Sparkle. We get to hit a page, and what it's going to do is it's going to prompt us to save that hyper file. Now, at this point, we're in a TWB file, so that's just a Tableau workbook file, and the Tableau workbook is separate from the hyper file. An option that I often do is I just hit cancel. I don't worry about where the file is stored, but when I'm working with Tableau workbooks, and especially when I'm collaborating with colleagues, then I want to make a Tableau packaged workbook. And that's going to put both the Tableau workbook and the data packaged together into a single file. Yeah. Since I'm kind of going down this path, let me show you the trick I like to do with this. To demonstrate that it's a packaged file, you can actually change the extension to a zip and then see what's inside that file. And there you see you've got your Tableau workbook, and separately you've got your file. So that's kind of just an interesting thing about the Tableau package workbook versus the workbook itself. Okay, so let's go back. So we're not going to go any deeper. You know, we've connected to our data, and on the left-hand side, we see our data source and we see the data fields. So you're connected. At this point forward, it would be a different exercise to talk about building worksheets and all all that. I want to show one other example. So that was with an Excel file. The other item that you'll notice down here on the left-hand side, you see connect to files, connect to a server. Now these are going to be database servers or different types of systems that you can connect directly to. These are pre-built connectors that Tableau has available to you. Some are to systems, some are to databases, others are to services like Google Ads, Google Analytics. So there's a wide variety of things that you can connect to natively. There's also a web data connector, which is a capability to build your own connector to a custom data source. I don't see, Jeremy, you can probably speak better to this more than I can. I don't see too many people using the web data connector, but it's real, okay. So it's there, it's a capability, it's available to you. So I want to demonstrate one file and one server. So I'm going to show you how to connect to a Snowflake server. And in this case, I've got my own Snowflake server set up, ready to connect to. And I was having a little bit of trouble earlier. Let's see if I can connect today. In that dialog box we just looked at, many of the connectors have slightly different requirements. If you connect to Oracle, you might get one set of dialog box options. If you're connecting to SQL Server, it might be a different set of dialog box options. But they all typically follow the same pattern. You know, what are you connecting to? Do you need a port or a role, a username, some kind of OAuth authentication? They're all basically the same kind of connection. Now, a moment ago, we looked at the file, and I didn't talk too much about what was on the left-hand side, but typically you're going to see what is the name of the connection, and then anything that you need to select, whether it's warehouse, database, whether it's a spreadsheet tab or something like that. In this case, we're going to pick a warehouse. We're connecting to Snowflake. So Snowflake separates its physical storage of its data from the compute mechanism, the compute engine that runs your queries. So I picked the warehouse to tell it what engine to use to run my work, and then where physically am I going to go look for my data, my database. And I've just got something, I think I've got some old weather data sitting out here. So I'm going to just show us connect to the warehouse, the database. It's going to load a set of schemas that are available to me to pick from. So schemas sit on databases. And here I've got some old NOAA data. And I did that kind of quick. You just drag items over to your canvas, and then you've got your data. Another really great feature of the data canvas here is, let's say I wanted to mash this Snowflake data with some other piece of data. Maybe I wanted to connect it to that file that I just opened up a minute ago. I mean, not really, wouldn't make any sense to do it. There's no connection, but you can do these things that they're called cross database joins. So on one hand, I've got a connection to Snowflake at the top, and right beneath it, I've got a connection to a file. So if I did have a meaningful, some supplemental data that was not part of my database, but was going to enhance whatever analysis I was going to do, I can mix and match Snowflake, you know, all these different systems, SQL Server, I'm sure, Excel files, and I can bring in my data source and I can establish my relationship. There we go. So if there was a relationship that existed between these two files, then I could establish that relationship and then begin doing some analysis. Okay. So at the end of the session, when we do breakouts, if you do have more questions about how to connect to data or those connections, feel free to join me in the breakout room that I'll be in. I'll be happy to cover any of those questions with you. Unless, Jeremy, Rashid, can you think of any other points that are good to? All right.
No, you're good.
In that case, let me turn it over to you, Rashid, for the next.
That's good for today, William.
Super.
We can go hours on this topic.
All right, yeah, give me a second to start sharing, guys. Appreciate, you know, both William and Jeremy taking the time to go through all of that with us. You know, it's a lot of great content, a lot of great stuff. kind of to their point, you know, there's so much you can be learning in Tableau that, you know, it's kind of impossible to learn everything in just, you know, under an hour. But, you know, the beauty is that we're going to try to cover, like I said, some of the biggest topics, you know, around. And the most, I guess you could say the most key ones is really kind of what I'm hitting at. Okay, so I want to talk to you about the order of operations, why is it so important, and the blue pill versus the green pill. Now, what does this mean? A guy once asked me about a few months ago, he said, you've been doing this Tableau thing for like years and a half. So I'm like 4 or 5 years in. He was like, what is one thing that you wish they had taught you, or one thing in the beginning that you didn't spend enough time learning that you realized after the fact? And when he said that question to me, these two items hit me like a bullet. Like, man, if I could go back to when I first started Tableau, I'd have paid a lot more attention to the order of operations and the whole concept of the blue pill and the green pill. And we'll get to the blue pill versus the green pill, because really that discussion is bringing 4 categories into play: dimension, a measure, a discrete value, and a continuous value. If you don't remember anything else, those are the 4 most important things in Tableau. They tie to everything. Literally everything. And it's one of those things that even when you know them, there are little bits and pieces that you kind of might get a little blurry along the way. And like I said, I'm telling you, as someone who's been doing this for years, I would have spent more time on those 2 topics in the beginning if I knew now if I knew then what I know now. So kind of going to do this out of order. You would think I'd start with the blue pill and the green pill if it's the most important thing, but I'm actually going to leave that for last, because I kind of want to William's point and kind of to Jeremy's point, we're going to work our way into why those 2 things are so important. So I want to talk about the order of operations first, because this was one of the ones that I don't think I spent enough time per se with just the general concept of it. So if you don't know me, I'm big on links. All of these links that I'm sharing, don't worry about them. I'm going to put them in our community forum. So all of these links you will have at your own discretion, because a lot of this stuff, it's in, like I said, we can't cover it all in a matter of 10 minutes. But there's really great content here. So the first link is literally Tableau's explanation of the order of operations itself. And the main thing I would say is the image itself. This is the thing that you almost want to print out and kind of put up like next to your monitor, or just kind of have it at your desk at all times, because this is the thing that you will be referring back to over and over and over again, you know, because it sounds silly, but believe me, as you get into filtering in Tableau, it plays out. So this is probably one of the most important links. The Flourish twins, who are Tableau Zen masters, had a great blog about, you know, the order of operations about 5 or 6 months ago. Again, this link, I'll make sure, you know, we put it in our community forum. The Data School, way back when, they did a really great piece on the order of operations and how important it is. And the irony is that literally in our Best of VTUG section, the one that I was actually talking about earlier today, back in June, I want to say it was June 30th. Let me give you 1 second just to pull it up, just to show you that it is in this list. Jim Denner, who just became a Tableau Zen Master this week. He's now a 2021 Tableau Zen Master. I've watched him do like 2 or 3 of these presentations on the order of operations. You don't have to watch the Des Moines Tableau user group. He's done like 3 of them. He's very, very good at explaining the order of operations. And again, he'll do an entire 30 minutes dedicated to just this topic. So that's what I mean. There's a lot of content out there around the order of operations, and clearly it's a big topic. And that's kind of why I kind of want to set the context to say, don't try to learn everything from me in the next 10 minutes, because it's more than a 10-minute conversation, but definitely use those links in those blogs, because again, they go into deeper, they dig in deeper to the aspect of the order of operations. So fundamentally, what the order of operations is it's telling you how Tableau executes things, you know, in the order of which Tableau is going to do it. And this plays out you'll see, you know, I'm going to show you a simple example and I'm going to show you a more complex one. But if you just look at this straightforward, it's telling you what it does first, meaning that it does extract filters first, then it would do data source filters, then context filters, then anything here, then dimension, then anything here, then measures, then anything here, then table count filters, finally with trend line and reference lines. And some of these things, like I'll walk you through kind of to William's point, what is an extract filter and a data source filter? Remember, we were just looking at this pane a second ago when William was showing you data source connections. It's the same principle. When you establish a data source connection, you have 2 options. You can to Jeremy's point, create an extract, which is basically saying, I just want to make a copy of this. I don't want to use the original data. I just want to make a copy of it. So if you choose extract, and within extract, you have some options, and one of those is filter. So if I were to add a filter of category and say, I want you to take a copy of this entire data set, but only when the category is furniture, meaning that's what this would do. If I clicked OK, it would take a copy of all of this data, but only when the category is furniture. That is the first thing in our order of operations list. Hopefully, I'm sorry. Yeah, so that would have been the number one thing right here. Data source filter, same principle of what I just did, but in this scenario, it would basically be the live connection. So if I just left this as live, and then I said I want to add a filter, as you can see, this is now a data source filter. It's the same principle. Like right now, I can do the same thing where I said category, and I said only bring back, furniture. The difference between the two things is this would still be a live connection. It would just be a live connection filtered on just furniture. The other one would have been a copy of that entire data set, again, filtered on just furniture. So that gives you an idea of kind of what we mean by kind of what an extract filter and a data source filter are. When you get into Tableau and you really start kind of playing around, what you're going to see is basically, there are two types of, I'll call them primary categories, but again, we'll get into the dimension versus measure and discrete versus continuous. But what a dimension is, basically, like I said, I'll get to that in a second. What I want to show you is that a dimension filter is this as an example. If I were to drop segment as a filter and I say just choose like consumer, this would be an example of a dimension filter. What is a measure filter? A measure filter is something like this. I'm going to drop sales onto filter, and I'm going to say, you know what? I only want to see it when it's at least $1,500 or something like that. And I'm sorry, give me 1 second. The keyboard isn't plugged in. Okay, so like something like this would be an example of a measure filter. So this is a measure filter, and this is a dimension filter. Again, let's look at the list. A dimension filter comes before a measure filter, meaning it's going to do this first, and then it's going to do this. And that's important because even in this example, it would start with, I'm going to first limit the entire population to just segments of consumer. And then of those consumer segments, I'm going to only show values that had sales that were at least 1,500. That's how these order of operations would work. And again, that's important because I want to show you why this plays out kind of, down the road. I'm going to talk about context filters. And this is just to set the not really teaching context filters, but I want you to understand why the order of operations is important. Right now, I've got a simple bar chart. And what's happening here is I have subcategory, I have sales by subcategory, and you can see that basically I have this little index, and it's just counting between 1 and 10. What I want to show you is that right now, subcategory, if you look at this, and based on what I just described before, you would think that, oh, he's got 2 dimension filters. Technically, I did. When I started, this was a dimension filter. But what I did was I went into this filter and I said, what I want you to do, I don't want you to filter subcategory like by one of these choices. What I want you to do is I want you to show me the top 10 subcategories by sale. So I just went from this general tab to this top tab. And now I'm saying that only show me the top 10 subcategories by the sum of sales. When I do that, I have now changed this. This is not a dimension filter anymore. Now it's a top end filter. So that filter is literally now at this level of the hierarchy, you could say. And the reason that's important, state, I didn't do anything. State's just a regular old filter. I haven't filtered on any states yet, but it's just a regular dimension filter. This is where this becomes important. The subcategory filter is top end. The state is a dimension. So subcategory, that top end is happening before the state filter, which is actually not really what you would want, because what it's going to do, notice that it's got the top 10 subcategories. When I choose Alabama, watch what happens. Now it only has 9 subcategories. And if I choose Arizona, we can see it still has 9. If I choose Arkansas, it only has 7. There are more than 10 subcategories. And you would think, well, oh, maybe Arkansas doesn't have at least 10 sets. No, Arkansas has more than 10 subcategories. So why is this happening? Because of the order of operations. What Tableau is doing, it's starting with the top end. So really what it's saying is that I'm only ever going to show these 10 subcategories. No matter what you do, I'm always going to show these are the top 10 subcategories. I'm going to start with these 10 subcategories and then show you which states had them. So Alabama only has 9 of them. Arizona has 9 of them. Arkansas only has 7 of them. It's the same 10 subcategories. Realistically, your end user probably doesn't want this. They want to see the top 10 by state. So how could we pull that off? I would literally just go into state and add it to context. Because if I do that, what I've now done is I've taken state from dimension and I've moved them up. So now he's a context filter. Now he's first and then the top end filter. So when I did that, now notice what happens. Top 10, now I'm going to choose Alabama, still 10. Notice that labels showed up. Labels wasn't part of the original one. There's no labels here. If I go to Arizona, again, it's going to show 10 no matter what. Notice art showed up. Art wasn't part of the original 10 either. No matter what state I choose, it's always going to show me 10. And that's what I mean by this order of operations is way more important than you think, because this is the kind of thing that I was dealing with over time. Like, why can I not just get these filters to work the way I want them to work? And this is, I didn't pay enough attention, like I said, to that order of operations. And then one day I printed this up and I just kept it next to me, right? My desk. So I could always kind of see, okay, fixed LOD is here and I've got a measure filter and I've got a table calc. So I know which one is going to do first. I say all that to say, this is more important than you realize in the beginning. It was more important than I realized in the beginning. And once I really wrapped my head around what was happening, it made everything so much easier. From that point forward, I was like, oh, I wish someone would have told me that in the beginning. So I just say all that to say, this is one of those things that in the beginning, it kind of was one of those, trust me, spend a little bit more time on order operations than you think, because it plays out down the road. And it's a good segue because, like I said, if order operations is the second or third most important thing, dimensions and measures and discrete and continuous are the most important. I'm going to kind of do this at this high level, and then we're going to dig into each one so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. But blue pills versus green pills, do not fall for the lie. A blue pill is not a dimension and a green pill is not a measure. It's just usually a coincidence that it works out that way. But the thing you want to remember is that a measure, and these, if there was a hierarchy, dimensions and measures are at the very top. That is the highest thing. Discrete and continuous are beneath them. That is something that's under these two. So these are the big boys. A measure, for what it's worth, think of it as something that you can do math around. A measure is a field that it is, a dependent variable that is, it's a value, is a function of one or more dimensions. Tableau treats any field containing numeric quantitative information as a measure. In English, if you can do math around it, it's a measure, or it could be a measure. What's the average of such and such? What's the sum of this? What's the total of that? Any kind of aggregation, that is a measure. If it's not something that's being aggregated, everything else is a dimension. If it isn't a measure, it's a dimension. When you bring data in the Tableau, like William was saying in the beginning, like your entire data set, Tableau takes every single field and turns it into one of those two things. Either it's going to turn it into a dimension or it's going to turn it into a measure. So again, measure, anything that you can do math around, anything that can be aggregated, dimension, everything else. Fundamentally, dimensions are going to be your categorical kind of, pieces of information. Your dates, your categories, your ID numbers. These are the types of things that are most likely going to be dimensions. And like I said, the measures are the things that you're aggregating. I want the sum of this, the average of that, that kind of a thing. So that covers dimensions versus measures. The blue pill and the green pill is what defines discrete versus continuous. Now, this is, like I said, where it gets tricky. A blue pill is discrete and a green pill is continuous. And what do I mean by that? Notice when we start dragging things into the view, it's always going to be one or the other. If I bring segment, this is what's known as a blue pill. Notice how it's blue. You see what I'm saying? And if I drag sales, notice how it's green. The main thing to remember is that you would think that, oh, the blue was dimension, the green was a measure. Look, segment is a category and he dragged the sum of sales, which is a measure. It's true. Segment is a dimension and the sum of sales is a measure. But the fact that this is blue and this is green is merely coincidence. It does not always have to be that way. A measure can be discrete and it can be continuous, and a dimension technically can be discrete and continuous, because I think dates are the exception to the rule. And we'll kind of walk through that in a second. But I just want you to remember, at the end of the day, if you remember this whole blue and green thing, blue is always discrete and green is always continuous. They're not tied to dimensions and measures. So let's kind of go through these one by one. Why are some things called dimensions? Why are they called measures? Why are some blue? Why are some green? And the measure names and the measure values. So first things first, kind of like what I said, every piece of data you bring in is going to get categorized either as a dimension or a measure. And then Tableau will do its best to try to figure out whether it's discrete or continuous, but it's not always right. And you can change that. Tableau might bring something in as continuous, and maybe you want it to be discrete. The beauty is you have that option to kind of change those things as you see fit. But like I was saying, this is kind of an example of your dimensions. Your dimensions are typically going to be strings, Booleans, which are true, false statements, and dates. Dimensions create buckets. If there's something that you want to remember, it's this thing. Discrete, creates headers. Continuous draws axes. And it's kind of the same thing when we start talking about dimensions. Dimensions will typically create these kind of categories. Notice how here, degree level, undergraduate, and then within that, you got the progression clarification. These are all dimensions. These are your categorical references. And then there'd be some kind of number. How many auditors do we have that have an undergraduate degree? These, like I said, are your categorical references. They're your dimensions. Your measures would be, like I said, the thing that you're measuring. This is kind of like I said, in the same example where I just said a second ago, how many do we have? That would be your measure. Your measure is going to do some kind of quantitative numerical information, and it's going to be some level of aggregation. Simplest form, things you do math around typically are going to be your measures. So, like I said, the whole blue pill versus the green pill, that's typically how you distinguish discrete versus continuous. And like I said, what I really want to categorize is, I took this off the internet and I intentionally put the red line here to tell you that, discrete is always a blue pill. Discrete is always individual, separate, and distinct, but discrete is not always a dimension. Typically, dimensions will be discrete, but that's not always the case. And in the same example, continuous is, like I said, your range. It's your unbroken access. It typically will be a measure, but again, not always the case. And like I said, if you want to see examples of kind of how this works in action, I'll give you, dates are always going to be the easiest way to show the differences between these things. This is going to be a good example of understanding discrete versus continuous. So right now I have a visualization. And I just have, this is all sample Superstore data, and it's just the sum of sales. But in this scenario, these are two discrete dimensions. I've taken ship date and I've broken it out on year and quarter. Key thing to remember, these are discrete. And this is what I'm talking about. Since year is discrete and quarter is discrete, you can easily see how sales were in the fourth quarter of 2017 compared to how sales were in the fourth quarter of 2020. There's a legitimate reason to have a visualization that looks like this, depending on what you're trying to do. Here's the same exact visualization. And the key is to look up here in this columns where you got two blue pills and it's year and quarter, and it's both year and quarter of ship date. And then we just have the sum of sales. If I look at the same thing, all I did here is take that ship date and make it continuous. This is just the same thing. It's just this continuous range. But notice that this is a different type of view than this. And there's a legitimate reason for both of them. There's a scenario where your user might want this, and there's a scenario where your user might want this. The key to remember is that, like I said, you have control over these things. I can take ship date and put it on columns, and now it's created discrete categories for each year. I can right click on this and just basically make it continuous. And now it is a continuous range. If I were to take something that we could actually measure, like sales, and you'll see basically what happened. So this is what I mean, that you as an end user have the ability to define whether something is discrete or whether something is continuous. It's kind of up to you. That's what I mean. So it's a lot to try to sink in 15 minutes. It's just more of a kind of making sure that at all times you're aware that dimensions and measures and discrete and continuous are the foundation of every single data point in Tableau. Every piece of data that you bring in will fall into one of those, really two of those four categories. And some things are kind of self-explanatory. I'll try to give you like a 5-minute hints and tips and tricks type of a thing, in that the best way to describe it is kind of what I was saying, that if we look at what I created here, this is an example of a continuous measure in this scenario, because it's basically, sales. Now, if I drag this out, it's going to try to create a measure. It just says the sum of sales. So this is clearly a continuous measure. It's green, tells me it's continuous. Anything green is continuous. And because it's got the aggregation in front, because it's literally the sum of sales, that's how I know that it's a measure. But again, like all things, we can change certain things. I can make this discrete. So it's going to change from a green pill to a blue pill. Now, all of a sudden, it's that same value, but it's just kind of like just the value itself, as if it's its own little category. Again, I did that. Remember, it started off as a measure. I turned it into, started off as a continuous value, and then I turned it into a discrete value. But in both of these scenarios, it's still a measure. Even though it's blue, it's still a measure. Remember, the whole blue versus green is discrete versus continuous. It's still a measure. But I'll change it back to continuous the way it was. I can change it to a dimension. I can literally now change this to a dimension. It's a continuous dimension. You're looking at it saying it's green, but look at it. It's a dimension. You have the ability with numbers to almost turn these things into anything. And now I just made it a discrete dimension. So I say all that to say, this is the bullet you need to remember. Numbers can be anything. They can be measures. They can be dimensions. They can be discrete. They can be continuous. Numbers can virtually fall in any category they want. Text fields and string fields will typically be dimensions. They can never be continuous. They'll be discrete dimensions 90% of the time, but there are things such as continuous dimensions. And I think there are a few examples where they could be measured. I say all this to say the rules are not hard and fast. Just because Tableau brings something in as a dimension or a measure or discrete or continuous doesn't mean you can't change it after the fact. I want to be conscientious of time. Like I said, this is my name is Rashid Banat. We're going to have the breakout sessions right now. If you want to know more about discrete versus continuous or dimensions versus measures, feel free to join me in the breakout room. But I say all this to say, if nothing else, spend a little bit more time when it comes to order of operations, and spend a little bit more time when it comes to discrete versus continuous and dimensions versus measures. I have a whole bunch of great links. At the end of this, I am going to put these links in our community forum. We've got some stuff that, again, talk about dimensions and measures, some links that talk about discrete and continuous, whole bunch of links that talk about order of operations. So I encourage you, check out this material, check out all sorts of other material, and spend time on dimensions and measures, continuous and discrete, and order of operations. It's a mouthful, but they are the foundation of everything else that happens in Tableau. So at that point, I'm going to stop sharing. And Jeremy, I think you're going to be the one that controls how we go into these breakout rooms.
Yes, I am. Appreciate it, Rashid. Thank you so much for that presentation. So we're about to try something that we have only tried one time before, and that was 15 minutes before this call. So here's what we're planning to do. I've created 3 breakout rooms so that we can have a more targeted Q&A. It's something that we see as having, that has been very effective in our in-person beginner sessions. Gives you the ability to talk to somebody one-on-one about your specific problems or challenges with the tool. So we're gonna automatically distribute you guys to one of 3 breakout rooms. William, myself, and Rashid will be manning one of the rooms apiece. We're gonna target doing this for 20 minutes. So I'll send out a warning a little bit ahead of 1:20, at which point I'll pull everybody back into this main room so that we can close out. I've got my fingers crossed. I hope you do too. Let's hope that this goes as intended. So I'm just making sure that one of our hosts is in every room. Rashid, you were in number 2. William, I'm moving you to number 1. And we are going to get ready to go. So you'll see a pop-up. Please note you'll probably show up in your new room on mute. So if you need to speak, remember that you'll probably need to unmute. And I think we are good to go. I'm so nervous about pressing this button.
Good. Let's see what happens. Roll the dice.
All right.
Wish us luck.
I hope to see you guys on the other side. Looks like everybody's back. Awesome. Awesome. All right, Rashid, William, how are your breakout rooms? Any pending questions we need to address that carried over? I know they ended suddenly.
I think they worked really well. It was real clear. We all jumped over to the other room. In the future, we can do topic-oriented rooms if we choose to. The chat worked well. People were able to ask questions. They were also able to take themselves off of mute. And your 5-minute warning worked really well. And we also got a 1-minute dialog box warning to tell us when to come, that we were coming back. So we were able to wrap up.
That was a soft exit. Yep.
Nicely done.
All right.
Yeah, I agree with William. Everything worked out really well. I look forward to doing more of them.
Excellent. Well, William, you want to close this out? Rashid, any closing comments from you?
No, I'll let William go. I'm good.
I don't have anything particular to say. Thanks to everybody for joining. Jeremy, Rashid, thank you for your continued leadership and leading us into the new year and keeping us on our toes with Tableau and up to date. Have a great day. Jeremy, back to you.
Rashid, will you
Yeah.
pop those links back up to our user group page on the screen just as everybody's getting ready to exit? Just want to make sure everybody has those handy. So that's our usergroups.tableau.com. I'm sorry, I should have given you a prompt.
No, it's okay. Yeah, give me a second. It's going to take a second to boot up, but yeah, I got you.
Usergroups.tableau.com/Charlotte is our page. Feel free to catch us there. Videos will be posted. Lots of additional content like Rashid covered earlier.
Yep, and yeah, this is recorded, so we'll get you the the link to that as soon as it's made available. And yeah, all of the stuff that I shared today, all of the links and things of that nature, we'll get that out to you too as well. And give me 1 second to Jeremy's point. I believe, I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, that's the book, the link that you want to bookmark if you want to keep up with all of our future content, things of that nature.
This has all of our contact information as well. A question came up earlier. If you need to reach out to us, please feel free. We are willing to sit and talk with you about the visualizations you have or you're building or ideas, best practice. So, reach out if you need us. We're here for you. And be on the lookout for some exciting future content announcements. Thanks to everyone for attending our beginner session today.
Thanks, everyone. Everyone have a good day.
Thanks, guys. Great session.
Thank you.
Thank you.